In order to get a good expectation on what these agencies are going to be able to do for you, best thing to do, put a campaign together yourself for a couple of months.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Maybe you've been dreaming of completely outsourcing your cold email efforts, or you might just be wondering if it's time to bring in the experts to handle your outbound campaigns. If you've ever thought about hiring a cold email agency, this episode is for you. We're going to go over the pros, the cons, and the costs. Plus, you're going to get some insider tips that will help you maximize your profits whenever you're working with an agency.
Hey guys, just a very quick one before we dive into this episode. If you want to learn from SaaS VPs and founders on how to scale in sales, marketing, and customer success with lessons from companies like Atlassian, Ola, Vistia, and way more, you can't miss this event. We're hosting and organizing a summit online just specifically for B2B SaaS businesses. So if you go to https://b2bsaassummit.com, you can register for free to all the sessions that we have. It's going to happen first week of October. I can't wait until it starts. And hopefully I'll see you there. b2bsaassummit.com.
So we may have some listeners that are thinking of hiring an agency.
Yeah, we were thinking, we keep on teaching people how to do it well and so on. And obviously you gain more and more skills. So at some point you may wonder, do I hire someone or do I do it myself? You may be constrained by time.
Or maybe a little of both.
Yep. And then you may want to hire a lead generation agency. And therefore, it was an interesting exercise to figure out, well, if I was to hire a lead generation agency, what should I need to pay attention to? And what type of questions should I ask?
Cool. And so since I have this lead generation agency,
disclaimer.
Jeremy felt that I was qualified to tackle this topic. So let's give it a go.
All right. And on my side, I have a lot of lead generation agency on my product already. So, I got a good overview of, what's happening in the world regarding lead generation agency. And slight digression on that, actually, it's really interesting to figure out that they all have a very different ways of doing things. That's not something that I thought at the beginning, but you have some people working with the client inbox, some people creating their own inbox.
I see.
You got a lot of very different things to work with.
So let's talk about it.
Right.
I want to kick things off, actually. I know this is your topic, I bet, but
it's all right.
Timing is the first thing I would consider. Is it the right time to hire an agency? That's a quick conversation that is very much worthwhile because I'll tell you, not every business is in the position to start hiring. In fact, some companies, I think, would be wasting money if they hired an agency right now.
Yeah, let's go over that. What are the time where I should not, hire an agency?
Don't hire an agency until you have a proven product or service and a proven segment that you repeatedly sell this to.
In other words, existing customers.
Well, it's not only just existing customers, because let's say you may have just been growing word of mouth, and that's nice. But if I looked at your customer base and they were completely scattered across different industries, different company sizes, and there was really no key pattern, I would hesitate before asking an agency to automate things for you because you don't have a marketing channel that's been proven. And that's, to me, a really helpful piece as an agency is to say, okay, well, what's been working right now? Okay, great. What do these customers look like? You don't have to have, let's say, a Facebook channel that's already profitable. You don't need, print ads that are sending you customers repeatedly. If that was the case, you probably wouldn't even need an agency. But you do need a customer base that is at least tightly grouped so you know who to go after.
Right. So in other words, you need to be able to be at the scaling level. That's when you will get an agency.
I don't even know about scaling. Just have a really clear idea of who you're going after. And you have to know that they have the budget and need for that product or service before you ask someone to step in and take care of your lead gen for you.
Okay.
Remove some of the guesswork for them.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're a startup, all that means is, hey, we've had success word of mouth through this particular buyer persona and we're doing really well. Now we just need someone to ramp things up. That's fine. You've got a proven segment. I'm happy with that. But just don't come to an agency saying, yeah, I don't really know who's our customer. That's bad. That's you should hear my voice in your head saying, I think you're about to waste some money.
Oh yeah. So in other words, I should really know who's going to buy my stuff before I contact the agency.
Exactly. You
Okay.
got it.
What is the risk otherwise? Obviously losing money, but is there
I just
more
think
risk?
there's more risk than you need to deal with, because if you don't have a proven buyer persona, if you can't sit down and tell me exactly who it is you're targeting and who's paying for this, then that agency is going to have to figure that out for you.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And every week that goes by that they haven't nailed it, you're going to be, sending money out the door. So ideally you say, hey, agency, we do really well with this kind of customer. And in fact, on the sales call, these are the slides that really win them over. Or when we are at an in-person networking group, when I mention that we do XYZ, then they really start getting it. Ideally, you've got some kind of a pitch going on as well. But the most important thing, a defined customer base.
All right. Got it. How long do you think that takes for an agency to be operational once you got that buying persona, for example?
Like how long would it take for you to see results?
Yeah.
Week one.
Week one,
you should have good replies coming in, because, the nature of cold email is if it's going to land in their inbox and the targeting is on and the message is on, it is very possible, we see it all the time that people reply to that first email. And I would just say that with something in mind. The first week is always the slowest compared to any other week that ever happens in an agency, simply because with time, two things happen. More prospects get added to the sequence, and that also means follow-ups have time to work their magic.
Mm-hmm.
And with more time, more A/B tests have been run, thus finely tuning the audience and the message.
Great.
So week one, you should see something happen, something good happen. Maybe your first lead comes in the door during week one. And just keep in mind, week 8, week 12, week 20 should be much better than your first week around.
My take would be to be careful with the domains and specifically the branding. So for example, let's say I'm Nike, for example. Obviously, I'm not. You guys know that on a podcast. It's no surprise here. But if I own the .com domain and my agency goes and buy all my .net, .org, .whatever, it's sort of like I'm not in control of my branding anymore. So I wouldn't want them to use their own cold email domain. That would have to come from me.
I see. So one way that you're protecting yourself while you work with agencies potentially is just own your own domains, right?
That's right.
I think that's good advice. And it'd be weird if an agency wanted to hang on to a domain that they have purchased for a client. I mean, they're a lead generation agency, not a domain reseller. So
that's right.
Probably good to talk out, maybe even get in writing, or save yourself the hassle and just buy the domains yourself.
That's right. Usually you can come with, hey, I got those 5 domains that you can operate on.
Yeah.
And here you go. And then the agency doesn't have to do any of that.
That's good. And keep in mind, domains are relatively cheap. They're not going to cost you a heart and a lung. All it is just, $10, $12 and you're on your way.
Point number 2 that I really want to get your help on this, actually. If I ever had to hire, God forbid, my own lead generation agency, well, it would be only for the prospecting side, of course. But one thing that will always be on my mind is, would they actually go for quantity over quality? And I want your help on that to figure out what type of questions can I ask, or what kind of thing can I put in place, or insurance can I get, that they won't be tempted to ramp up the volume if the results are not coming in. And basically just wasting my sender reputation or the sender reputation of the domain that I give them.
Yeah.
Or, just do something like dodgy and then reach out to every people and get me flagged as spam and whatever and impact my deliverability.
Well, I think there needs to be a conversation on how many prospects are going to be contacted each billing period, because that's part of your strategy. I mean, think about the market you're in. I've said this many times on the cast, but there's a finite number of prospects in your list, and it would be a shame for one agency to burn through them in 3 weeks. So have a conversation about volume. What's the number of prospects you're going to find? Where are you going to go about finding them? You don't need to know the specifics, but you do need to know that there's a certain set of criteria that will indicate a good prospect for you. So just simply talking about volume up front will help you understand their approach on how many people they're going to be contacting. Be wary if they're reaching out to thousands of prospects each month. And I would also say, what goals did you give them? Like, what is their objectives? And did you blindly say, hey, I need 15 demos booked each month, you take care of it, and then you hang up and hope that it happens? Well, that's a recipe for, an agency to potentially just throw a lot of coal on the fire and try and churn out a bunch of these leads to get that done. Whereas if I think you have a conversation more about the entire process, where they fit in, and more of a partnership, I feel like that may not be as high as a risk.
So in summary, make sure that they understand the persona that you want to go after and just get some broad understanding as to how they're going to get it.
Well, it also has to do with the payment structure. Some agencies work on a per lead basis. Mm-hmm. Some agencies say, I'm going to contact X number of prospects on your behalf each week, each month. Mm-hmm. And you may not have as great visibility if they just say, we deliver a lead and you pay XYZ when it arrives. You don't know what else is going on because you may only see the leads that come in. So if it's a pay per lead arrangement, really find out what else it is they're doing to generate these leads.
Is there another way of assessing that?
Have the rights to the inbox. Mm-hmm. You could just see how many prospects were counted. You might say, hey, send me the dashboard you have. I'd like to review it with you monthly or quarterly or weekly, whatever your involvement should be. But you can see a dashboard at everything they're doing. It's totally reasonable to ask, hey, can you review things with me? I want to see progress. I want to see some stats, just so you feel comfortable about what they're doing on behalf of your company.
All right, so hear me out on this one. What about if I own already the domain? Maybe I can go ahead and then create their own email. Would that be a good idea? And therefore, you have access to the inbox?
I wouldn't, because as an agency, I want to own the whole process. Right. I want to make sure that we're using the right kind of domain. I mean, for example, if you said, hey, Jack, I'd like you to work with me, and I just bought mybusiness.biz. I wouldn't take that domain because I know that I get better results using a .com, for example.
There you go.
So I'm not happy with that domain. I also wouldn't want you to set it up because as an agency who cares very much about open rates, I want that whole inbox to be set up by my team. No questions about it. You can see what we've done and at the end of the day have that domain, but that matters. That should be owned by the agency.
Got it.
Yeah, I think there needs to be another conversation about what kind of leads you're going to be getting from this company, because some leads are an opener to a conversation. Other leads may mean, hey, these are booked calls. Just check your calendar, appointment setting kind of stuff. And that matters quite a bit when it comes to pricing or expectations for the agreement between you and the agency. So you need to get very clear what they mean when they say lead generation.
Yep. Some people actually work directly with the inbox of the person. Like, hey, you got 5 salespeople. I'm going to do the outreach on behalf of them. They get access to the inbox and then they use that. Some people, like you mentioned, go to setting the appointments and create some other salespeople that doesn't exist. You do have like a lot of variety. And I think volume is a very important question that you do want to ask, because I really see that all across the board. It's very different behavior between the people who they contact us and say, oh, we just need 200 a week, kind of thing. And then you got the people that say 1,200 a day. And it's just just be mindful about that. In my mind, that's the biggest factor that helps me to figure out, are they going to be successful or not?
Okay. The low volume people, yes. The high, probably no.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you have only 200 leads and out of those 200 leads, you should generate some good results. You're going to have to spend more time on it than, if you say 1,200 in terms of just the reply.
That's true. That's true. And I think the trend today, I'm going to say for better, is the lower volume, high personalization stuff is just outperforming things. And as a company who may be hiring this low batch agency, that's good for you because you probably have a lower risk of burning your domain or running through all of the prospects in your market quickly. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you've been listening to the show enough where you know that quality trumps quantity every time.
Every time.
But certainly just lay that out on the table and ask them their stance on how many prospects will they be contacting. Do you get to know that information, or is that something that they were trying to keep in-house or under wraps and they're just sending you the leads. And so they may say like, oh, that's sort of up to us, but I would be wary about not knowing how many prospects are being contacted on your behalf. And I have one other key point that I think you should ask this agency that you're thinking about working with, and that is what the contract looks like. You may be locked into a 3-month agreement, a 6-month agreement, sometimes a 12-month. But personally, as an agency owner, I never locked in anybody to more than a month. It was sort of our results is what's going to get you to stay, not the legal agreement that you signed. So I think that's important. I mean, there's reasons to stick around for 3 months, because like I said, it does take some time to get the follow-ups to be sent out. And, things do ramp up when you bring on an agency. So month 2 or 3 is definitely going to be better than month 1. But I still feel like you should be happy the second week that you've been engaging with them, or else something's a little bit off. So I would have a very clear discussion on the minimum engagement process, what it looks like to close the contract. Maybe we could talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so eventually, because you choose to do it in-house, or you're not happy, or you get bought out by Google, there will be a time where you stop working with this lead generation agency. Could be a good celebration moment for the both of you. I know in my company, we had a kind of a champagne moment between clients when they grew to a certain point where they were, maybe engaged with us when they were, I don't know, a couple people, smaller sales team, and they got a big office and went on like a hiring spree because they got funded. And they have this whole sales and marketing department that is sort of like a toast to them, that once they get to that point, okay, great, we can happily go our separate ways. To me, that's a win. Mm-hmm. After, usually that takes a couple of years, but
it's like me when people get acquired by Google after, using QuickMail to grow.
Exactly.
It's a good feeling.
So there will be a time, and you may want to figure out what that looks like when you go separate ways. Who owns the domains? Who gets that inbox? Is it easy to transfer? And, just sort of outlining that process, just making sure you own the assets that you want to own. That's the big stuff. You don't have to spend 15 minutes just about, what's it look like when you leave, when you're considering agencies, but do get a clear idea of what you own and what you don't.
That's a very fair point. Control and ownership, right? Those two very important points.
And Jeremy, from your side, someone who may hire an agency, I don't know, what would you want to own besides the domain?
That's a good question.
If there's like an inbox, you certainly want the login, passwords, and all that to manage that outbound inbox, especially if you're going to be handing it off to someone in-house. That would be nice.
It's a tricky situation for me because I think I nailed down part of that cold email process very, very well, and other part not so well. So for example, more painful for me is doing the research and the prospecting. I just hate doing that stuff. I know how to do it. I just hate doing it, Someone else was doing it for me, okay.
Yeah.
But the reaching out and
inbox,
it's all good. I'm good. Everything deliverability and processes and handling reply. This is all good.
Cool.
So it will be only part of it.
Okay.
But I can imagine that for someone who own or doesn't have any part of the process nailed down,
they need everything.
I need to get everything.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one in terms of what do you want to own.
That's true. And quick shameless plug. Jeremy, you mentioned it would be nice to have a couple of aspects of your cold email campaign taken care of for you, like research or prospecting.
Right.
Well, listeners, you can check out emailsthatsell.com. We sort of offer these on-demand cold email services now. So you don't have to go for the full-blown done-for-you stuff. Now you can just get the parts of the campaign you need and get on with it.
What should someone own or ask to own when they don't have any part of that process nailed down?
I would like to figure out if you are paying for the software that's sending the emails, it would certainly be nice to have all the access passwords to the cold email software, your cold email inbox, the domain that it's registered on. Those are like 3 basics that you must have. Beyond that, typically there's not a lot of heavy lifting involved with transferring once you leave from an agency. But typically it's all about the domain, like you mentioned, and the inbox. And hopefully you'll be able to take over that inbox and use it in-house or whatever you may be able to do. So just ask if they are going to be able to share that kind of information with you upon departure.
Great point. One last point I'd like to bring is actually about expectations. It's a bit like in sport. You can't really ask someone, starting his baseball game and then doing home run one after the other. It's just like, it's not realistic.
Yeah.
So at some point, there is a level of expectation as to how much can a lead generation agency bring to the table. So sure, there will be evolution, but what should I expect? How much is too much to expect? How much is not enough to expect? There's a fine line here. Unless you've done it yourself, you kind of like know the game. And
there you go.
If we do it ourselves, then we get like X% reply rate kind of thing. And then we bring the lead generation agency to come and help.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to figure out.
Do you know who my favorite clients to work with are? They're companies who have tried outreach and have had some success. They really understand the game. They come with data. That is the best advantage you can have when bringing on an agency is say, oh, by the way, here are the campaigns that we ran before. Here are our numbers. Here's what worked. Here's what totally flopped. And I tell clients like on the onboarding calls, it's like, send me every outbound email you've ever sent, even if it performed terrible, even if it got crickets. Because I want to see what is working, what to avoid, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So in order to get a good expectation on what these agencies are going to be able to do for you, best thing to do, you've been listening to the podcast, put a campaign together yourself for a couple of months. And at the very least, it will show you, A, what you can expect. And keep in mind that an agency who does nothing but cold emails should blow your results out of the water. But at least the market that you're in, you're up to speed because I'll go on a short digression, but there are some clients that I've had in certain markets, they've just nailed the product and the audience so well. And they've had an inbound presence for a couple of years that when we took over their outbound, it was insane how much of results came in the door because they were familiar with the brand. It had an insane offering, like I mentioned, and they were really, really happy their first week. It was great for both of us. Also, I've had clients in more competitive markets who are very pleased with what I would normally consider a slow month. So just keep in mind, it does matter. There are the certain unicorns where a technology can come out and be the first of its kind. And as soon as you tell someone who needs that problem, they did not know that existed, let's get on the phone immediately. So I can't tell you how many leads you can expect because I'm not sure what your business or your market looks like. But running some emails yourself, running some outbound campaigns is going to give that agency a lot of firepower to use. So I would be wary if they didn't ask you, how have you been generating customers to date? That to me is one of my favorite questions because it shows me what's working. Even if it's like, hey, we go to trade shows and we talk to this kind of customer and we tell them that we do this differently because of X, Y, Z. And yeah, we've had great success with that. Well, good for you as an agency, to target that specific trade show attendee and you tell them that pitch basically in a really nicely worded cold email. But they have to ask you how you've been getting customers to date. That to me, there's so much gold in that question.
Cool. So I will boil it down to 2 points on my end is have a discussion up front about expectations. Talk about it and then see if, expectations are going to be matched or if it's like totally unrealistic. And then after that, just keep that as a baseline to judge how they are really performing. Because if you guys have an expectation meeting beforehand, then you're going to know what they should achieve. And the second thing is pretty much like hiring for any other position. It's a bit like those founders that never done any sales, hire a salesperson and ask them to perform. You're going to be driving completely blind.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to either have done it yourself or really get a good understanding of what is entitled so you can get someone on board and then really judge like, okay, that's really helping us or not.
There's one thing that I would add to that, and it goes back to our discussion on quality versus quantity. The most dangerous thing you can do for an agency is say, hey, I need X number of leads each week. Make it happen. Here's the money. Click. Because if you don't have guidelines in place, it's almost like it's this black box where you like insert money and leads come out the other end. You have no idea what happens. It can be cool, but then you certainly wouldn't want to see oh man, we reached out to 10,000 people this month using MailChimp, or I don't know. I mean, worse things have happened, but these things happen. So it's really important to just get a clear understanding. Just ask them, hey, can I either see the dashboard? Can I get access? Can you review things with me every now and then, or set a certain time to meet and review stats? Or even just ask them point blank, how many prospects will you reach out to on our behalf each time frame?
I love this one. And one thing I want to ask you specifically, because I don't know if this is too much or not, or if this is okay or not. For me, I feel like super comfortable asking, like, can I talk to one of your past clients?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question.
Due diligence kind of thing, right? Rather than just taking the salesman's word for it.
Yeah.
Are you just going and talking to a successful clients they have?
Yeah, that's great. That's even better than reading the testimonials on a site. So ideally, grab a phone call with one or two or several of their. I mean,
give me your whole list of clients.
I actually think the big thing is just if they're comfortable with sharing phone numbers with you.
Then that would be great.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk about: how much does it cost to hire an agency?
Ooh, good question. Should we talk about it? Okay, so here's my point. I always, every time I talk to a lead generation agency coming to my system, I always sort of get a feeling as to where is their offering in terms of pricing. And again, it varies, but it kind of like boils down to, it's like that bell curve kind of thing. All the offers are pretty much hovering around the same sort of price. And then you got like the small one and then the extremely high one.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's your take on that?
I mean, it really depends what pricing model you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because the people who charge per lead, and I've never set up my business like that. So if you're looking pay per lead, Google somebody else, for the love of God. No, so it depends on the model. But I would imagine if you're working with an agency that, it's not a college kid who's working out of his parents' basement, I think you need to be comfortable with spending $2,000 to $5,000 a month on well done outreach. I mean, it's expensive for some companies. It's also a no-brainer for others. So know where you're at, know how much these leads are worth to you. That's huge. Like if you don't know your close rate from lead to new deal and what that deal ends up over the lifetime of that customer, it's going to be hard to justify spending thousands of dollars each month on lead gen. You've got to know the value of your customer and the value of each lead that comes in. And also, maybe I didn't emphasize this enough, but get really specific to your agency on what kind of leads you want, because the more specific you are, the more qualified the leads that are coming in the door. Remember, they haven't worked for your company before. This is new for both of you guys. Give them lots and lots and lots of data points so they can return to you with an outline of their approach. That's something we haven't mentioned yet. It's like you may want to see, okay, strategy-wise, what's going on here.
That's right.
It's if you have to pay for a strategy call with this agency, I highly recommend it. It's a good way to get your foot wet and say, hey, let's talk about outbound. Maybe I'll pay you for an hour. You can school me how you would do it. And if you're pleased with their approach, pay them to do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a pretty good one. How do we do with pricing? Any other rocks we haven't uncovered?
No, but I love the discussion about pricing around value than actual amounts.
Yeah.
So the number you gave is roughly that. We got 2,500 is pretty much the medium kind of thing where everyone just hover. I do have like one with 10K and cheap ones with 800 kind of thing. And it's kind of always a funny thing, when you look at value, like each of their customers, let's say on average, give them like 2,500 and then they go and pay, $69 for QuickMail, which is, it makes me happy, I'm like, it's the worst, but you should make you as happy as the owner. So you pay them 2,500, but you get your client for 10K or 20K, right?
What's the rule?
You should be as excited as that.
I think whatever you charge for anything, your customer should get 10x the value.
There you go.
Right. So if you're billing
absolutely
2,500, what is it? Then, they should see 25 grand come in each month. This kind of effort to me makes a lot of sense if your accounts are large.
So that means I should charge $250 a month. Okay, guys, this is probably the last month. It's at $69.
No, Jeremy's not going to do that.
No,
right?
I'm cool. I'm cool. Don't worry, Jack.
Okay.
You can keep your secret price.
I'll convince some fellow agency people and So, okay. Right. Hopefully this backstory has given you questions you may want to be answered by the prospective lead generation agencies. And one last thing I'll leave you with: how do you find a good agency? Best thing, ask your network. Maybe you have friends or colleagues that are using and happy with agencies.
Yep.
Or just contact your favorite podcast host who happens to talk about cold email. No, but seriously, be smart about hiring an agency and best of luck.
There you go. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right, a lot of things in this episode if you're looking to hire a lead generation agency. A couple of things that you want to consider. Have a conversation about control and ownership. Who's owning the domain? Will you have access to the software? And also about payment and strategy. So are they pay per lead or something else? And how are they going to generate all those leads? And make sure you're crystal clear as to what a quality lead means to you. Next, handle everything you have over to them. If you already performed some campaign in the past, then show them the results, whether it's performing very, very well or it's been performing really, really bad. And finally, make sure you do your due diligence. Ask for speaking to past clients and ask your network. And remember that if done well, it should be extremely profitable and you should see results from week 1.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn, that works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.